The age-old debate for triathletes. Do you get a road bike with clip-on aero bars or a fully-fledged triathlon bike? Is it worth the investment, or can you get a lot out of your road bike? Well, with some expert help today, we'll be weighing those options up and how you can set their positions up. Of course, the road bike is a very versatile bike. In fact, most people probably started out with the road bike because it's perfect for those everyday rides, adventures, club rides, bike races, commuting, and even some of you may have done a few triathlons on your road bike. But now you have the triathlon bug and you want to go that little bit faster. So do you just whack a set of clip-on aero bars onto your road bike, or do you take the leap and invest in a dedicated triathlon bike? Of course, the second option may not even be an option. You may simply need to make the most out of your road bike, which is exactly why we're here today. I've come to meet with world-renowned bike fitter and physiotherapist Phil Burt. He's worked with some of the best cyclists and triathletes in the world. So today I'm going to be quizzing him on this road bike versus triathlon bike debate and how he goes about setting them both up. Well, thanks Phil for joining us today. I imagine you've seen your fair share of road bikes with clip-on handlebars over the years. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the road bike primarily isn't designed for clip-on aero bars on there, but they do serve a purpose. They reduce your frontal area, get you more aerodynamic. But as I say, a road bike isn't really designed to have them on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the fundamental thing, is that when they designed this bike, they expected these to be here and you to be adopting that position. I completely understand why somebody might want to try these before they invest in a full-on time trial bike and have to be running two very expensive bikes, you know? So what I think, if we understand what the issues are around using aero bars on a road bike, and then maybe some hacks and how you can mitigate the problems it concerns. For me, fundamentally, what it is about the design of the bike. What you'll notice here is the seat tube here is angled, yeah? So normal road bike, somewhere between 72, 74 degrees angle. That's meaning that the saddle's going back here, yeah? It's all the way back. So a road bike is a more relaxed position. Remember again, yeah, bike fit and bike positions are really rotation around the bottom bracket. So Frenchman with his onions here, you know, time trial for Team Pursuit here, you know? So what this does, it means that when you put this on here, it really closes, and we'll get you on the bike to show you this, it really closes up your hip and back. So whilst you might be more aero, it kind of compromises the engine room and power production. But there are some things you can do to mitigate that and get around it a little bit. I often say though, ultimately, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. So it's a quick fix. It's all right. Yeah, it was quite controversial. Probably did myself out of any aero bar deal there, but it can work. But what I want people to understand is what are the problems with it and what they might feel when they do it, because they might put them on and go, oh God, I've paid for these, I'm more aero, but I'm feeling this, and this, and how they can then get around those things as much as the bike will allow, if that makes sense, yeah?
Well, shall we jump on and see what we can do to make it work?
So Mark, this is you on the top of the hood in a row position, and what we have here is a really quite nice bike position, maybe sitting a tad low, but I know the saddle's been in the car. We'll get some numbers in a second, yeah? But the way this works is that saddle position there and the hood's here, I mean that your upper body's fairly in a good place, you know, it's in a good angle. And if we, at the moment, if we now go down into the drops, into the aero bars, yeah, and when you come down here, you can see what happens, and you do it pretty well, but the main thing I notice is now we've got a much more, you know, lower back angle. Your arms gone into the hoods pretty well, but for me, it's the hips getting so close there. Can you see that? So,
yeah.
And how does that feel? Do you feel that when the...
Yeah, I do. It just feels very cramped up, like my knees are coming into my chest. I'm sort of feeling already, and very quickly, it's like, just like my breathing. Yeah. I feel like quite, like it's just tight.
The big thing about this is, because that angle's like that and you drop down, it closes up the hip exponentially, you know? So one thing, and the road bike probably runs a higher, ordinarily a road bike crank length will be higher than a TT one, yeah? So one thing we might talk about is we either bring this up at the top, yeah, to open you back up, your diaphragm then can descend. That's the problem you feel at the moment. Your diaphragm's so squished up you can't go down, so you can't breathe. And your hips are getting tight, you'll find it hard to run off the bike. You probably, if you just stop at the top of the pedal stroke, right here you've got a bit of a dead spot in power production because the hip can't extend quick enough. I can feel that. Yeah, when you go down there, can you feel yourself rocking there ever so slightly anymore? That's the top of the hip. Hip gets closed and it can't close up anymore, so it just rocks you to one side. So But you can make this work if you wanted to, yeah? Because we either would bring you up on risers here, and that would open up the hip from there, but that kind of defeats the point, maybe, of having aero bars on in the first place to lower your CLF. But I would say, if we shrink the crank length right down, if you stop at top dead center, that will open up the hip at the top. Dropping 5 mil will give you 4 degrees back at least, you know. You might go really strict to quite a smaller crank length. Remember, it's only going to change your gearing, it's not going to change your performance. But open up the hip, stop the rocking, make you feel better, allow you to breathe, stop those knees coming quite as high. It's quite a dramatic effect, you know. So I think the hack there is, what I would ordinarily do is change the crank length, and then normally you can put the saddle even higher and move it forward a little bit.
I was going to say, because I haven't moved the saddle at all since putting the clip-on aero bars on. And I kind of wanted your advice a little bit on that.
Well,
like, how much do you move it by?
Well, let's do it, right? I reckon record you on the hoods, record you in this drop position with the retool, yeah?
Okay.
Quickly logo those numbers. And then, yeah, let's set this saddle height up. We can't change crank length today, but maybe we can do that after the interview. But we'll put you up and forward and see how you feel. Remember, retool, all bike fitting systems, they give us the data. The data isn't the bike fit, it's an interpretation of that and how you feel about it. I think something I call comfort filter that I'd encourage all people to consider is that's your subjective interpretation of how something is working for you, yeah? Don't let that be dismissed. But ultimately, how you feel is the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right, so we get that recorded then. What you can see is that's beforehand, and then this data is going to come in here. So knee extension was really quite good, 37. You see that's gone down, and then see hip angle closed, how much that's gone down.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So that's massively changed between the two positions. And then what you see down here, the normal thing is, so beforehand, that's you on the hood, yeah?
Yeah.
It's still really good, but you see how your tilt's gone up quite a bit, your knees moving in and out. That's because the hip's getting close. As you come to the top of the pedal straight, you're having to move out. So it's still all right, and you see how much more hip lateral travel you're having to do. So double already, yeah? I think what we should do now is just see if I can make you feel more comfortable by lifting the saddle, moving forward, and just tilting the nose a little bit. Because by dropping the nose on the saddle, in my mind, you know, we have design saddles. I don't know of any saddle that should be used nose up. It should always be level. But often the tiny amount of tilt will really open up the pelvis and give you a similar feeling to dropping crank length, all right? So we do that now.
Yep, let's do it.
See how that feels like.
That's far more comfortable.
You just tell straight away. That's not a million miles away from your time trial position, you know. So hips opened up more. How does it feel?
Yeah, it feels way better.
So just by increasing that saddle height, moving the saddle forward and tilting it, we've managed to open up your pelvis and open up the hips. I think if you combine that with a dropping crank length, this would almost work as a bit of a bodge job TT position. Yeah.
No, I definitely, before I could feel as I came up to the top, I sort of like there was just this dead spot in the power.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I've got control the whole way around. I definitely probably could like tweak the saddle height a little bit more.
Yeah.
Obviously we've just eyeballed it now.
Yeah.
And get just a little bit more comfortable around the crotch, but it's...
yeah, and it might be, that's a road saddle.
Yeah.
And if this is a time trial position where we need a bit of a softer nose or split nose saddle to make you work in that position, the difficulty you have there is you need a saddle really that's a bit of an all-rounder because it needs to maybe support this position and then dropping the thing, but there's quite a lot of options out there, you know, that can help you.
And what's quite cool is I guess over the years, clip-on aero bars have developed quite a bit. You can get risers for them, so you can actually, there is a fair bit of adjustability.
I think that's right. I mean, these are flat stick, aren't they, almost, you know? But I think a little bit, if we had a bit of a rise and a little bit of an angle on this and maybe a bit more length, I think that'd be quite a good, it's almost what I call a rest aero position. So, you know, when you go on the floor on flat straight, but you go down in there and just concentrate on really pedaling hard in a nice aero silhouette, you know? And then you're back on the hoods.
Well, actually, I mean, you're saying that, I'm actually looking at myself in this mirror ahead of me. I'm like, this looks all right. It's not too bad.
Doesn't look bad.
I mean, you could do things like get narrower handlebars if you want to get a bit more.
Well, I was going to say the biggest thing before people should move to this is make sure the handlebars are the width's optimal. I noticed these are 38s, which are really just going from a 40 to a 38 makes a massive difference in aerodynamics because it's like if you don't want to be any wider than you need to be. But I think that's actually working quite well for you. I think we have to recognise the animal in front of us, Mark, which is a very well-trained individual who has ridden a long time like this, right? Now we've modified that saddle position to open up the hip and make it work best with there. It's getting you ready. If you drop the crank length 5 mil on this bike, it then would work. If you ask me if that would work for the road position and the time trial position, equally so.
Cool. All right, well, talking of which, let's swap over to TT bike. Okay, Phil, onto the triathlon bike, the TT bike. What are the obvious differences here then?
So the big difference with a time trial bike, if you ask me, is it's not the front end, it's the seat post angle, yeah? So on a lot of TT bikes, it's almost in line, you know, this one's a little bit more relaxed, but basically what you're able to do is put the saddle a lot higher and a lot further forward. So we're allowed to come forward over the bike, bring our pelvis over the bike and get into that really strong pedaling position.
Yeah, it's almost like a track start position, isn't it? You feel like it's just
and then allows you to drop down and get, this is where the aero bars really start to work. You know, you've got a lovely long position here, almost like torpedo-like, elbow just underneath your shoulder, looking pretty strong there. And the most important bit that here, what I like is a bit, nice extended knee angle without closing up the hip too much, we could manipulate, like I say, in my world, I always think crank length should be 5 mil less, if optimal on the road bike, on the time trial bike, because it allows us to sit in that position for longer. You're really good at handling it, having said that, but that's what
it'll be interesting to see maybe play around with this one, but another day.
Another day. This is, you've got to consider a time trial bike as almost like a scalpel to perform an operation. That operation is going as pedaling as hard as you can and cutting through the air as fast as you can, I think sometimes people need to just take a step back and get as good as they can on a road bike, first of all, to do that, because this is really hard. If you talk some of the best, Bradley always said the best team time trial position or team pursuit you ever met was Ed Clancy. Now he lives way up in the Peak District. He'd ride this for 2 hours into the velodrome, do a session and go home again. So in other words, you mould yourself to it. If you go down a minute, the hardest thing that most people find when they go into a time trial bike is their neck aches, because it is like looking at the ceiling. If we asked everyone at home now to look at the ceiling for the next half an hour, nearly everyone would say my neck feels a bit sore afterwards. That's time trialing, So it is fundamentally quite a difficult thing to absorb for the body, but we need to make that as comfortable in all those things. So having the right saddle, having the right crank length, having the right front end setup here that allows you to, the high hands position. If you ask me, bringing that front end up helps us out with the neck musculature a hell of a lot, because it decreases the total effort that's going in from the upper body. I think comfort often is sort of hijacked as a word, and it makes it feel like we're being lazy and sitting down. It's nice, but I'm comfortable to perform as best as I can. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So if someone's kind of refined the road bike position, or they've just decided, heck, I'm loving this sport, I'm going to get a triathlon bike, what are the key things to look out for? Because I've seen a lot of people jump onto triathlon bike and there's just this feeling that they need to be super aero, and actually they're probably worsening their performance as a result.
Yeah. I mean, there is a point where you go. I know this because I spent lots of time in boring wind tunnels and everything, but generally true, the lower you are at the front, the more area you get, but that goes to a certain point and then it's detrimental, so you pop up, your head's there, you're not sustainable, and that point comes sooner for more if it's not your job every day to mold yourself into this position, hey, guess what, that point comes quicker the lower you go at the front. So I think if you haven't got access to all that expert guidance is about what is it. Wind tunnel testing costs a fortune, but most people these days can probably afford to test power. What I would be doing is tinkering with the back end and working out what the most powerful position is, which in my mind is normally with the ideal saddle height, which is higher than you normally think, with the right saddle for you in the right position. So generally higher, further forward on the time trial bike, and I think, as we did a minute ago, just tilting that nose down ever so slightly. In my ideal world, the nose of the saddle should always be 1 to 2 degrees tilted down, just opens up that pelvis, enables you to get over it and really powerful, pedal as hard as you can. Get that right first of all. And most people, some these days, have the ability to measure that. You can actually change that and sit on it and go, does that feel easier to produce the same power? Or am I more powerful? You'd be surprised. Drop the crank length. Do I now say there, am I more powerful? And then we come to the front end. Okay, how can I make myself as aero as possible? It's a lot harder to calculate that, in terms of objective data and stuff like that.
Super. Okay, I guess my final question for you then is, when is the time to get a triathlon bike?
It's a very good question, Mark. What I think is, if you want to, I think having a play around with, even though I'm not a big fan of aero bars for reasons that we discussed on the road bike, per se, that bike's not built to do those things. But we talked about little tricks you can do with the saddle height, the type of saddle, the saddle tilt to the front and then crank length can make that in some ways replicate what being in a time trial on a time trial bike would feel like and look like. If you go and do that and go on that journey and you're like, you know what, I like this, and then a time trial bike will be built for that job, and you will have even more of an opportunity to explore your most aero and most powerful position, for sure. But if you don't get along with that at all, I suppose the horrible sort of catch-22 question is it because the clip-on aero bars won't allow me to be comfortable? And actually, in fact, I do need a time trial bike to compete with the right crank length and right saddle to allow me to be in that aero position. That's probably where I would say, of course I would say this, but that's maybe where you go seek some objective outside help through a bike fitter.
Yeah.
You can look at your position and go, first and foremost, what we see a lot of people come in here, hey, going to buy their dream bike, road bike, time trial bike, and they just come in and say, I don't want to buy the wrong bike, and I'd like your advice on what, and we really enjoyed doing that, narrowing it down and going, well, look, and some bike companies, of course, will let you spec certain things like crank length and handlebar width, and so, if you're doing that right from the beginning, rather than having to take them off and all the costs of replacing that, it can help out. It's one of those things, having written books and communicated like we are today in videos, there's so many variables, it can sometimes be a bit blinding on which ones to concentrate on, and if we could, sometimes that's maybe seeking a bit of outside help. It could be from just a coach or a trusted friend, you know, or someone who you trust with their advice in terms of bike setup.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really good advice, so thank you for that.
All right, mate.
Well, again, so much information from Phil Burt, so thank you ever so much to him for that. If you'd like to find out more about Phil and the services he offers, then do go check out his website. Pop that in the description down below. We also have a previous video with him in which Belinda, behind the camera right now, actually got a bike fit with him. If you'd like to check that out, also pop that in the description down below. Really interesting to hear from him around that comfort versus aero debate and that switch over from a road bike to a TT bike. I suspect a few of you might have a few questions on the aero bars on my road bike. If you have got any queries or questions around that, drop me questions in the comment section down below and I'll try and get back to you and let you know what they are and how I got them on there. If you enjoyed today's video, please do give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.